off this countdown, we have the Robert E. Lee statue. In September of 2021, a statue of Robert E. Lee was taken down in Virginia following the protests of the death of George Floyd. Upon taking down the statue, they found a 134-year-old time capsule buried underneath it. The capsule was uncovered inside of a square box, which was 20 feet up inside the granite block that the statue was mounted on. It's thought that the capsule was placed in the pedestal 2 years before the statue was erected. It is believed to contain items from the Civil War and even a rare picture of President Abraham Lincoln lying in his coffin. They just hope that the items have not been damaged by water. The opening of the capsule is said to be performed by a preservation team at a lab within a couple of days. Moving on to number 9, we have the Expo 70 time capsule. In 1970, two major manufacturers decided to create 2 time capsules that would remain unopened for 5,000 years. This was done for the 1970 Expo in Osaka, Japan. So each capsule contains 2,098 objects or recorded items. These items were culturally significant objects to the people of Japan, and most were actually recommended by the public to be put in there. You got everything from music to art to recorded messages and even literature in there. There's also apparently a slinky, ceremonial kimono, and the blackened fingernail of a survivor from the Hiroshima atomic bombing. Now, the time capsules have 2 sets of instructions. The lower capsule will remain buried for 5,000 years. The upper capsule was to be opened in 2000, which it was, and then every 100 years from that, it will be reopened to then be cleaned to ensure its survival. Coming in at number 8, we have the Nickelodeon time capsule. Not gonna lie, I am most excited for this one, just because Nickelodeon played a huge role in my childhood. So Nickelodeon buried a time capsule in 1992. They filled it with tons of 90s memorabilia, including a Game Boy, Home Alone on VHS, a box of Twinkies, and a jar of Gak. They then buried it in front of Nickelodeon Studios at Universal City, California. It is planned to be opened on April 30th, 2042, 50 years after it was buried. So set your calendar, folks. I'm excited. Moving on at number 7, we have George Lucas. Do we have any big Star Wars fans here? How about Indiana Jones? Why, do I ask? Well, George Lucas created his very own time capsule and buried it at Skywalker Ranch. Apparently, the time capsule contains a number of priceless Star Wars memorabilia and artifacts. AKA, that time capsule is gonna be worth millions of dollars. But here's the thing, Lucas never wants the capsule to be unearthed. He said, and I quote, "It's for some archaeologists 2,000 years from now to discover. We have an archive and it is very big, but after a few hundred years it will be gone. So the only thing left is the time capsule." So thousands of years from now, archaeologists will unearth this treasure and be like, yo, how cool was Earth back then? They had lightsabers? That's sick. You know, they won't know what the heck this is. Moving on at number 6, we have the Los Angeles Bicentennial time capsule. In 1976, Los Angeles celebrated its bicentennial by burying a time capsule. And you're not going to believe what they put inside of it. They wanted the time capsule to reflect the era. So inside, they put a pet rock and a skateboard. How fitting is that? But they also put a dress worn by none other than Cher and a Lakers basketball jersey, among other memorabilia. All I care about is Cher's dress, though. The capsule is set to open in 2076 for the city's tricentennial. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Martin Luther King Jr. time capsule. Located under the Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C. is a time capsule buried in 1988. This time capsule contains the belongings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You'll find a number of his personal possessions, such as his Bible, a robe he wore to preach in, and most importantly, the audio recordings of a number of his speeches. This capsule is said to be unearthed in 2088. Moving on to number 4, we have the Westinghouse time capsules. The Westinghouse time capsules are 2 time capsules created by the Westinghouse Electric Manufacturing Company. Both were buried at different times, but to be opened at the same time. The first was buried in 1939 and is said to be opened in 69-39. This one contains microfilm, newsreels, seeds, and fabrics. The other time capsule was created in 1964 and is also meant to be opened in 6939. This one contains an electric watch, electric toothbrush, among hundreds of other items that were popular and in demand at that time. Coming in at number 3, we have Bunkerhill. Now, this time capsule is pretty odd. So it was buried in 1961 in Los Angeles and was said to be opened on May 9th of 2011. Yet it has never been opened. Either people forgot about it, or they lost the capsule, or people just can't be bothered to dig it up. But it makes for a good scavenger hunt if you want to go out and find it yourself. I'm just kidding. This capsule is said to contain old telephone equipment, including transistors, solar batteries, and an operator's headset. And now I genuinely want to know what happened to this capsule. Did they just forget where it is or something? Like, I want to know. In our second spot, we have the Sleeping Beauty Castle capsule. In 1995, a time capsule was actually buried at Disneyland. It was buried in Sleeping Beauty's castle. So the next time you go there to take a picture in front of the castle, just think to yourself, wow, I'm standing right above a time capsule. Apparently, this capsule contains artifacts representing the first 40 years of Disneyland. But we still don't know exactly what items are in there. I just predict a lot of Mickey Mouse memorabilia. This time capsule is actually going to be opened very soon, and soon I mean 2035, which is close compared to some of the ones on today's list that won't be open for like thousands of years, okay? And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Crypt of Civilization. This is definitely one time capsule that you do not want opened. Why? Well, it was created in case of the downfall of society, and it's unlike any other capsule on this list. That's because it's not just a tiny box, but it's a full-on chamber. So it was built from 1937 to 1940. It's a 2,000 cubic foot room filled with documents and artifacts, like 640,000 pages of microfilmed books, religious texts, etc. It even contains a special language integrator to help teach English to whoever finds the vault. It also contains items such as 800 works of every subject, historical recordings, and items to show our technological advancements like typewriters. Now, the opening date of this capsule is not for another 600 years, or like I said, until our society fails. This vault is said to preserve our way of life in case of a mass extinction. There's also a bunch of random stuff in this vault that I had to let you guys know, like there's Lincoln Logs, throwback to those, pantyhose, because why not, and a figurine of Donald Duck. Yes, because those items are imperative for a society to flourish. Imperative.
At number 10, we have the rise of communism. In 2019, there was some upkeep being performed at Britain's House of Parliament, and the workers found a time capsule that was left behind by the previous workers. By previous workers, I mean it was from the year 1950. And inside this capsule was one thing and one thing only. It was a bunch of propaganda for the Communist Party. When we look back on these times, we always think about them as a hard split right down the middle. That the communists were on one side and everyone else was on the other side. But like all things today, there's always a gray area. These guys predicted that there would be a rise in communism, and even though communism isn't the biggest power in the world right now, you have to admit that they aren't really in a bad spot. You have Russia, China, and North Korea all repping the communist flag, and no matter what your opinion is on them, you have to say that they are very powerful. Then when you include things like Antifa popping up in America, there's a lot of people that think communism is the true way to live. Could these workers have been right? Are we on the brink of a communist revolution? At number 9, we have the environment. I know if we made a time capsule now, we would for sure put something in there about the environment. What about if you were an 11-year-old boy in 1991? I think if I was making a time capsule when I was 11, it would be all about how I want to get superpowers when I grow up, and that I want the gnarliest collection of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. But that's not what this kid wanted to talk about, because he was probably a much better person than me. But Mitch Brogan, who is now 39 and living in London, Ontario, he wrote that in the future, all of the lakes and rivers would not be clean anymore. They would be destroyed by humans. He even went a step further, saying that we would have gone to other planets and we would have polluted those planets as well. Well, we still have a few lakes and rivers left before they're all gone, and we haven't started trashing space yet, but I really do think there's a few people who are trying. That's definitely probably around the corner. And number 8, we have the Tulsa Car Competition. In 1957, the town of Tulsa did a competition with a brand new time capsule that was worth a lot of money. The prize was a of 1957 Plymouth Belvedere, which basically looks like every car in the movie Grease. The car didn't have any predictions in it about the future, but the way you won the car was you had to guess the population of the town in 50 years, so what the population would be in 2007, and the winner was only off by 2,000 people. That's a pretty spot-on calculation of population growth. It's pretty crazy. At number 7, we have the New Hampshire Riddle. In 2019, the town of Derry, New Hampshire gathered together to take a look at a time capsule that was buried in 1969. This was a huge moment for the town, and everyone was so excited to see what secrets would be locked away in this time capsule. Well, they would be let down because when they opened it, nothing was inside it. Why would someone bury a box with nothing in it? Well, some people thought that this was a message to the future. In the future, there would be nothing left. The idea is that we would have a grim and scary future with no resources. Could this mystery message be a prediction for the actual future? Well, I guess we'll probably know in a few years if everything collapsed. That's fun to think about. At number 6, we have Greg Wilkinson's renovation note. This is actually a very interesting idea. Greg Wilkinson was living in Sydney, Australia. He had bought a home and he had to do some renovations on the entire place. Well, he decided it would be a great idea if he could renovate and leave behind a time capsule note behind one of the walls. That way, if anyone renovated again, they would find the note. The note was hidden in 1995, and he predicted that it wouldn't be found until 2060. Well, I guess he thought his touch-up job was good for 65 years. Well, he was wrong, because in 2017, someone found the note and people were shocked by his predictions. He stated that Islam would move in as one of the powerful ideologies in the world, and this would lead to conflict between two major religions, that being between Christianity and Islam. The tensions would then spark a war that would go on until everyone realized that the war is pointless. It's a little vague, but some people see this as a prediction for 9/11. It was a conflict between two ideologies which caused the events of 9/11. Eastern versus Western mentality. So is Greg a political genius, or is predicting that religions will fight each other just history repeating itself over and over and over again? Next on the list, we have the Magnolia time capsule. The Magnolia Bridge has one of the most beautiful views of the city of Burbank, and when people think about Burbank, they think all about movies and TV shows because a lot of stuff was shot there. But there was someone in 1959 that wanted the city to be known for something else. He wanted the city to be known for having the correct predictions of the future. It was Larry Harsnish who was the person who discovered the time capsule. He was a historian, and through his readings was able to find out that someone had hidden away a capsule that was cemented into the side of the Magnolia Bridge. So they needed to get some heavy-duty equipment to break this thing out. But once they got a hold of it, they were shocked about what they saw. Packed inside it was footage from 1959. Everyone involved got to see what that era really looked like. But there was something else in there. There was also predictions about the year 2009 when the capsule was supposed to be opened. It stated that in that year the ground would move on its own like a moving sidewalk and energy plants would be built underground. Well, they were half right. We do have escalators, but maybe nuclear power plants under the earth are just around the corner. Who knows? Elon Musk is doing a lot of stuff with digging holes. Maybe he'll invent something like that. Right after that, we have a message about mental health. Science is always moving forward, and I bet many scientists wish they could peer into the future so they could see if what they're working on is actually right or wrong. This is kind of what happened here. A time capsule from 1958 was discovered in Indiana, and in it was a message from the past to the future. It was from a mental institution, and they directly referenced electroshock therapy and psychiatric drugs. They talked about how they know the science will advance, but one of the biggest problems was that the footage was damaged, so it was hard to understand. Predictions about the future about the advancements in medicine were correct. The scary part about this was looking at two doctors who practiced electroshock therapy. That's kind of terrifying, knowing that they were electrocuting people to try and cure them. Right after that, we have 2063 AD. In 1963, a time capsule was buried in San Diego. It was supposed to be buried for 100 years. It was all predictions about what the future should look like and when these things would happen. A book was published with all the predictions in them, and the most accurate one by far is that we will discover natural resources that we didn't know existed. Solar and wind are both growing industries that are changing the world. But most of the other predictions, like the ability to travel the speed of light through space, those didn't really work out. Next up, we have an Irish primary school time capsule. There were time capsules that were buried by a ton of schools in Ireland back in 1996. This was a program throughout Ireland called the 2020 Vision Project. They wanted to see what kids thought the future would look like, so they buried time capsules with all of their predictions. And some of the theories were pretty outlandish, like some people thought that cancer, AIDS, and heart disease would all be a thing of the past. I mean, that's a beautiful thing to think about, but it's not a reality at all. In fact, I bet a bunch of people people watching this video know people are affected by these diseases. But there was one contributor who wasn't very far off. Joe Duffy, who was a well-known figure in the Irish community, put in his 2 cents on the project, and this guy was closer than anyone else to what the future would look like. He said the world would be run by greed and we would have telecommunication devices that keep us from meeting face to face. And I mean, look at us right now. Look at what's going on. I mean, like, on the computer, talking to you guys, we're not talking face to face, but we're talking in a way. Now, I don't think high-tech devices are to blame why we don't see each other face to face. Also, I don't think that they're all completely a bad thing. Now is as good a time as ever to see how the internet brings people together. But greed being a thing that runs the world is very true. The struggle between the 1% and everyone else is a real thing that Americans are dealing with all the time. Really, the whole world is dealing with all the time. And seeing how the American government is so hesitant to help their people in a time of pandemic, but is willing to bail out billionaires and banks at every second, shows you how powerful greed is at all times. All right, and for number 1 on our list, we have the Westinghouse time capsule. This time capsule is crazy because it had predictions from Albert Einstein in it. The capsule was buried in 1939, and by far the most interesting part of it were the predictions left behind by the genius. A lot of the stuff he said was bang on, like how the production and distribution of commodities is entirely unorganized so that everyone must live in fear of constantly being eliminated from the economic cycle. In this way, we are suffering because we want everything. That sounds pretty bang on to the way we're living every day. Like, think about all the stuff you order on Amazon and how you buy a ton of stuff and how we're constantly trying to stay up with trends so we can be cool or anything like that. It seems like he had a good idea of what our culture was going to be like.
Starting off in our 10th spot, we have the Capsules of ancient Egypt. Now, ancient Egypt is known for having several unexplored tombs, tunnels, and crypts. Now, the crypts themselves are often referred to as time capsules because of all the hidden artifacts preserved inside. Other people believe that there are tons of time capsules hidden throughout ancient Egypt, although they wouldn't be the typical ones that we have today. They believe that these would contain artifacts and scrolls that could give us more information on ancient Egypt. However, people believe that if you open these capsules, then you will be subject to an ancient Egyptian curse, or that you will trigger some sort of booby trap and be killed in the process. Other people believe that if you don't open the capsules correctly, then it could completely destroy the artifacts inside. It's frustrating because these capsules could help us learn more about ancient Egypt, but at the same time, nobody wants to be cursed. Moving on, at number 9, we have the mysterious time capsule at the Washington Monument. Now, during construction of the Washington Monument, workers discovered a mysterious time capsule. They said that this time capsule was over 100 years old. The capsule was found behind a bronze plaque that had September 12, 1915 engraved on it. People believe that that was roughly the time that the capsule was placed there. Now, no one knows who made this capsule or why it was there. It still remains a huge mystery to this day. Now, many people didn't want to open the capsule, fearing that it may destroy the contents. But they didn't listen, and a year later it was opened. Thankfully, none of the contents were destroyed. Now, I know I technically cheated with this one because they opened it, but this story was too interesting to not include. They still don't know who put it there. In the capsule, there was a copy of George Washington's second inaugural address, a glass bottle with his portrait, and some coins. So did somebody put it there on behalf of George Washington, or what? Mystery remains. At number 8, we have the refrigerator capsules. Now, in 1939, Westinghouse filled a capsule with hundreds of items. Some items included alarm clocks, hats, and alphabet blocks. Now, a man named Wayne Donaldson was inspired by that, and in the 60s decided to fill a refrigerator and bury it on a hill. A bunch of other individuals followed in his lead and also did this. Apparently, using a fridge worked really well because it kept bugs out and preserved the items. Now, Wayne decided to put items such as a lava lamp, photos, and hit records in the fridge. All of these individuals plan to dig up their fridge when they are 80. But seriously, hold on one second. Fridges are expensive and they would be a hassle to bury, so you won't catch me doing that. Now, there is a conspiracy that some other people have buried some fridges of their own, but these fridges won't contain lava lamps. Instead, they believe that it may contain dead bodies. In our 7th spot, we have the photograph time capsule. Now, this next story was posted by a Reddit user. Although I'm not sure of its validity, it was too good to not include in this video. So this user said that 20 years ago, him and his 4 childhood friends made and buried time capsules. Now, they almost forgot about their time capsules, but eventually they remembered and dug them up when they were around 30. But when they dug it up, the user found something more terrifying. Now, in his capsule, he originally placed 2 medals, a $5 bill, and a Charmander Pokemon card. However, All that he found in his time capsules were photos. Now, he really should not have opened this capsule. Each photo was of him at a different stage of his life, and it was labeled. The first photo was of him at his father's funeral. The caption wrote, "Soon you will wish you could join your father." Another photo was at his graduation. The person that took this photo is said to be Karma. Now, this is quite scary because he doesn't know who had been taking these photos of him and how it got inside the time capsule. Now, this story may be fake, but people believe that it was the user from a parallel universe contacting himself. One thing for sure is that this Reddit user wishes that he listened to his instinct that told him to not open the capsule. Coming in at number 6, we have the Expo 70 time capsule. Now, this time capsule was created by Panasonic and the Mainichi newspaper. They wanted to create 2 time capsules that preserved life and heritage. Now, the lower time capsule is going to remain buried for another 5,000 more years. The upper capsule was opened in 2000 and another would be opened every 100 years. Now, each capsule is said to contain 2,098 objects. A lot of the objects in the capsules are still unknown. However, some have reported items such as false teeth, handcuffs, a glass eye, and insects and resin. Like seriously, what a random mixture of things. But what are the other items in the capsules? Well, I don't think we'll be alive to get the answer to that question. But hey, if you're watching this video in the year 6000, then comment down below. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the largest axe in the world. Now, let's make our way to my country, Canada. In New Brunswick, a giant axe monument was constructed. This was to commemorate the importance of the lumber and forestry business. Honestly, this is one of the most Canadian things, I swear. Now, this axe is huge. It is made out of 55 tons of steel. It's 23 feet in length and the handle extends about 50 feet in the air. It's massive. Now, apparently there is a time capsule hidden in the axe head, and people believe that it will never be discovered. Seriously, what do they have to hide? Why would they put a time capsule somewhere that can't be accessed? And I don't think anyone is going to destroy this monument, so it's safe to say that we will never know Canada's secret. But honestly, it makes me think, what other monuments have time capsules inside of them? Maybe the Statue of Liberty? Who knows? But knowing Canada is probably just something like a maple syrup recipe or how to make the best poutine. I don't know. At number 4, we have the haunted capsule. Now, this is another story posted on Reddit. What's freaky is I ended up writing about this and then I went back to the page and it no longer existed, so I don't even know. So on January 20th, 2018, this user and his friend found a time capsule while using a metal detector out in the forest. The time capsule had "Please don't open" written on the lid. His friend really wanted to open it, but the user got a bad vibe from it. He even said that when he touched the capsule to open the lid, he felt cold all of a sudden and his vision went dark for a bit. Now, the friend ended up taking the capsule home, but immediately regretted it. He said that the whole night he felt like someone was watching him. The next day they went back and reburied the time capsule. But they still don't know who put it there, why, and what's inside. Honestly, I'm just glad that they didn't open it. Like, it probably would have just unleashed some sort of demon. Sounds like a good basis for a scary movie though. Coming in at number 3, we have the Crypt of Civilization. Now, this chamber was built from 1937 to 1940. And you heard correctly, it's a whole dang chamber, not just a tiny capsule. It's a full 2,000 cubic foot room filled with documents and artifacts. Now, you're not allowed to open this chamber for around another 6,000 years. So the purpose of this chamber is actually terrifying. It is said to be compiled with knowledge and other contents to preserve our way of life in case of mass extinction. So this room contains items such as 800 works of every subject, historical recordings, and items to show our technological advancements like typewriters. There are other random items like pantyhose and a figurine of Donald Duck, you know, the important stuff. There's also a device that will instruct those who find the chamber to learn how to speak English. Now, people believe that this was made because humanity won't live much longer. They think that another species will dominate, or that the government has some sort of sinister plan to deal with overpopulation. This chamber will hold the last memories of the human race. But seriously, imagine finding this chamber and seeing pantyhose. Like, I wouldn't know what they're for. Like, putting them on my legs would be the last thing I would do. Next up at number 2, we have Franklin Roosevelt's time capsule. Franklin D. Roosevelt was the 32nd president of the United States. Now, in 1940, Mr. Roosevelt buried a 450-pound time capsule, which is said to be opened in 2040. That's right, this thing is massive. But oddly enough, no one knows what is actually in there. Seems hard to believe that the president was able to bury a huge time capsule with no one even questioning it. When researching, there's hardly any information on it, and people believe that that's for a reason. People think that what the capsule contains poses a threat to national security and should never be opened. They fear that it will reveal harmful government secrets. Other people hope that it will have the frozen president himself in there, which wouldn't make that much sense if he was still alive when it was buried. But all we can do is make assumptions and hope that nothing bad happens when it's opened in 20 years. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Richard Nixon time capsule. Now, Richard Nixon was the 37th president of the United States and was said to have hidden a time capsule in the White House. What does this capsule contain, you ask? Well, according to Earl Robert Merritt, Richard confided in him that it contains proof of extraterrestrials. Now, some people don't believe Earl and question his credibility, but he swears that the president met with him in secret and read him a letter stating that the US was protecting extraterrestrials. He also claims that scientists were conducting experiments and communicating with them. Now, the location of this time capsule is still unknown. Only a handful of people know where it's hidden. However, Nixon claimed that it will surface when the time is right. What do you think? Are aliens real? Will this time capsule expose the US government? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Star Wars capsule. Even some of the biggest Star Wars fans in the world might not know that there is a secret Star Wars time capsule somewhere out there. It's buried at Skywalker Ranch in California. It was put there by Star Wars creator George Lucas. He put it in the corner of the building and filled it with secret artifacts from the Star Wars movies. George was once asked when would this time capsule be opened, and he said never. Literally never. Well, not quite never, but he wants it to be discovered in the distant future by archaeologists. This is bad news for die-hard Star Wars fans out there who are really hoping to one day see the priceless contents of this time capsule. Moving on now to number 9, we have the Millennium Time Capsule. Now, as you guys might guess from the name, this time capsule was buried at the turn of the millennium in the year 2000. It was sealed by the White House and contains a number of culturally significant items from history. These include a CD, photos of Earth from space, a computer chip, a World War II helmet, a cell phone, a piece of the Berlin Wall, and even a photo of Rosa Parks. There's also a pair of Ray Charles sunglasses, because, you know, why not? For me though, the most interesting thing they put in there might actually be Twinkies. Yeah, an actual pack of Twinkies. However, I also read that the Twinkies were later removed because they were attracting mice. I guess people in 1,000 years will know a lot about our world, but almost nothing about Twinkies. What a shame. Next up at number 8 now, we have the largest time capsule. The town of Seward, Nebraska claims to have the world's largest time capsule. It was constructed by local store owner Harold Keith Davison, who wanted his grandchildren to know what his life was like when he buried it in 1975. The 45-ton vault was buried under a mound of dirt on the front lawn of his appliance store. It's packed with artifacts from his own life and also general items from the 1970s. The most striking item has to be his Chevy Vega car, which still sits inside the vault to this day. Moving on now to number 7, we have the Westinghouse time capsules. These are a pair of time capsules prepared by the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company. The first one was buried for the 1939 New York World Fair and contained fabrics, metals, plastics, literature, art, and news events from the time recorded on microfilm. The capsules are intended to be open in the year 6939, a full 5,000 years after they were buried. In that distant future, our language and culture may be so different that whoever finds the capsule may not know what to do with any of the items inside. This is why the creators of the time capsule included detailed instructions on how to make a microfilm viewer and also a projector for the newsreels. I'm sure the future humans will really appreciate that. Next up at number 6 now, we have the Helium Centennial Time Columns Monument. This was constructed in 1968 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the discovery of helium. The time capsule is actually made up of 4 different parts. The different parts are supposed to be opened after 25 years and 50, then 100, and then 1,000 years. The first 2 have already been opened, but the third will not be opened until the year 2068 and the final one until the year 3068. Now that last capsule contains a passbook for a $10 savings account from an Oklahoma City bank, which draws 4% interest every year. After 1,000 years, it will be worth over $1 quadrillion. so definitely worth the wait. Next up at number 5 now we have Kyo. Technically, Kyo isn't a time capsule yet, but for me it's too interesting to not include on this list. Kyo is a proposed space time capsule which was intended to launch back in 2003. It would be set on a course that would lead back to Earth 50,000 years in the future. It sounded like the perfect time capsule. It will be out there drifting in space without ever being tainted or ruined by people here on Earth. And what would the world look like when it finally landed again in 50,000 years? Well, fans of the project have been left wondering those questions. The project was delayed until 2006, then to 2007, then 2008, then 2010, and then basically every year since then. Currently, the Kyo website cites 2009 as its launch. They're inviting every person in the world to contribute to their capsule. They're looking for people to post messages to the people living 50,000 years in the future. They promise that every message will be included without any censorship. Although Kyo has been delaying its launch now for over 15 years, many people still send their messages to them just in case the project ever does go ahead. Moving on now to number 4, we have the CN Tower. Some of you may be surprised to learn that our channel is based in Toronto, Canada. Perhaps the most iconic landmark in this city is the CN Tower. Standing at over 1,800 feet, it's towered over the city since its completion in 1976. To mark the occasion, a time capsule was placed at the very top of the tower inside the walls of the lookout level. It's intended to be opened in the year 2076, a century after its completion. Inside, the contents contain a letter from former Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, letters from school children at the time, copies of 3 newspapers, Canadian coins and bills, and even a video about how the tower was constructed. Ah, isn't that nice?